How's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, well, so as most of us, I'm sure, know, non-attachment is a central doctrine in many Eastern philosophies or religions, like, for example, Buddhism. And the main idea of non-attachment is something like the following. It's to advocate for a state of emotional detachment from desires and external outcomes and material possessions, all with the goal of attaining inner peace. Now, although this doctrine can without doubt provide some clarity and some equanimity in the face of life's vicissitudes and uncertainties, I don't think it's at all free from challenge. No, I think objections can be raised to this idea that human well-being and human flourishing ultimately lies in detachment. And at least three very general objections come to my mind. So first of all, and this is in no particular order of importance, but first of all, I think you could argue that living out a philosophy of non-attachment risks disregarding moral responsibility. And second, I think it risks undermining what it means to love and to more generally for things to matter. And third, I'd say that non-attachment threatens to flatten out the richness of human experience. Okay, so let's take the issue of moral responsibility first. And actually here, someone like the French existentialist philosopher Simone de Beauvoir might be helpful. So for her, the human situation is entirely relational. More specifically, our own individual freedom is tied up with the freedom of others. So the bottom line for her is that we're all entangled ethically, whether we're aware of it or not. Well, one might argue that when we practice non-attachment then, which is to say when we try to insulate ourselves from the world's contingencies, what we're doing is we're denying this ethical entanglement. In other words, when we renounce involvement, what we're doing, or at least de Beauvoir would say this, what we're doing is we're becoming complicit in a kind of nihilism by not working towards the freedom of others. So detachment here is really not a virtue. No, it's more like an evasion. It's an evasion of moral responsibility. Real virtue is attachment, pure and simple. It's to attach ourselves to people and to causes, even if we know that suffering and turmoil is going to be the end result for us. Okay, but while I'm on the topic of virtue, I think it's also relevant to say something about the issue of authenticity here. And actually here, de Beauvoir's lifelong partner might be really helpful, namely the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. You see, for him, to be authentically human is to make choices that come without guarantees. It's to project ourselves into unknown futures. It's to fully exercise our freedom. Now, all this comes with emotional investment and risk, no doubt about it. But for Sartre, that's the price we pay for living authentically like this. Well, then to practice non-attachment, that's to avoid authenticity. It's a kind of a hiding, or what Sartre might refer to as a form of bad faith. It's a refusal to accept the anxiety that comes with making choices and taking responsibility for them. It's a refusal to own our choices. It's to deny the fullness of our freedom and the complete and fundamental openness of life. Okay, the second objection that I raised had to do with the issue of love. So I think one could plausibly argue that non-attachment is simply incompatible with genuine love. And before I get to that, let me first go all the way back to Homer's Odyssey. So there's a striking moment in that story that feels deeply relevant. So after the Trojan War, Odysseus is stranded on the island of Ogygia, where the immortal goddess Calypso rescues him and holds him captive for 7 years. Now she offers him eternal youth and eternal love on the condition that he stays with her forever. Now, despite this paradise that she offers him, Odysseus refuses. Instead, he spends his days gazing out into the sea, longing for his mortal wife, Penelope, whom he hasn't seen in 17 years. Now, what's extraordinary here is that Odysseus turns down not only immortality, but also eternal love with a beautiful divine being in a place more idyllic than anywhere else in Western literature. So, why? Well, because he loves Penelope. She may be aging and she might be mortal, but she is simply irreplaceable. In other words, Odysseus chooses the imperfect, finite love of a particular person over Calypso. He prefers the challenges and the heartache and the aging of real life to the comfort of eternal bliss. He chooses meaning over ease, because only in loving a finite being can he truly care and be cared for in return. So Calypso's paradise may offer endless leisure and insulation from loss and tragedy, of course, but it comes at the cost of real human love. Now, I guess the point here is that there's nothing safe about genuine love. Genuine love means presence and vulnerability and exposure. And that means that to love is to risk pain and loss. But it's that very risk that constitutes love's meaning. Now, detachment or non-attachment might guard against suffering, yeah, but it also undermines the essence of love. The human condition is one of finitude, and it's through our attachments, our bonds with others, and our care for very fragile things that we make life meaningful and beautiful. Non-attachment might provide peace of mind, but only at the cost of what many see as the heart of being human. Okay, well, actually, this is really a good time to segue to the third objection that I raised, which was that non-attachment threatens to flatten out the richness of human experience. And here I can think of at least one philosopher who might be instructive, and that is the German philosopher Nietzsche. So for Nietzsche, the ideal of life is not calm detachment, but rather something like passionate engagement. And actually, it's for this reason that he sees Buddhism as life-denying, as valuing peace of mind over intensity, and as trying to flee from suffering rather than embracing it and using it in your life. In this way, I think he partly sees Buddhism and other similar systems of thought as belonging to people who deaden their feelings because they can't bear them and because they can't incorporate them into their life. In any case, what Nietzsche urges instead is to affirm life in all of its splendid chaos, in its triumphs and its tragedies. After all, what kind of life are we really living if we don't feel anything too deeply? Which is what he thinks happens if we turn away from attachment. But Nietzsche aside, I guess the even bigger question I have is, and this is my own question, why should the ultimate goal be freedom from suffering? Why is that so often the default position? Why is some dependency and attachment and passionate fixation so terrible? I don't know, but personally, I'd gladly suffer the agitations that come from this than secure my own personal tranquility. As the French philosopher Camus said, I'd rather die unreconciled. I'd rather have lived the full-blown, passionate life with all its beautiful and terrible markings than to cease desiring for the sake of freedom from suffering. I'd rather suffer like Tantalus than extinguish myself in nirvana. Bye for now.